Hello, my furniture friends. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Katie. I am the K in Salvaged by K Scott. I'm a full-time furniture painter and refinisher, and in this week's video, I'm going to bring you guys along with me through the entire makeover process of yet another free dresser that I picked up off the curb and saved from the trash. Last week, as I was scrolling through my Facebook Marketplace feed like I do a million times a day, I was so excited when I scrolled past a 5-minute old post for a free curb alert mid-century modern dresser. I hopped in my van so fast and scooped this guy up. Despite being really dirty and already painted in some blue chalk paint, this piece is in really fantastic condition. All of the drawers are dovetailed and work smoothly. There doesn't appear to be any major damage, just a few nicks on the corners of the drawers. I can tell that this is chalk paint because it's really porous and matte to the touch, and chalk paint just has a very distinctive feel. The person who painted this previously did a really nice job with their paint, but it never got sealed with a wax or a protective poly top coat that chalk paint really needs. I looked all over this piece for a maker's mark or any kind of branding information, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And it's also missing all of its original hardware. When I take a look at the inside of the dresser, I can see that it is built out of the typical particle board with a wood veneer over top, and that's okay. It is still solid and sturdy. The first thing I wanted to do was remove those awkward looking placards on those middle 3 drawers. Usually these are tacked on with small finishing nails and you have to pry them off, but when I took a look on the inside of these drawers, I could see that they were held on with 3 screws. Once I removed the screws from the back, the front placard just fell right off. Very surprisingly, to me anyways, these are actually solid wood pieces, and I thought they were a neat shape and could be useful, so you may see them in a future video repurposed into something else. Next up, I removed the rest of the drawers so I could take a look at the interior structure of the piece. I always check over the drawer runners, make sure there aren't any loose nails or screws popping out, and then I started vacuuming out some of the dust bunnies and cobwebs. This is normally the part of my process where I give everything a really good scrub down with a strong degreasing cleaner, but I'm going to be making a ton of a mess sanding down the texture that is built up with this blue chalk paint, so I decided to take a risk and do my sanding first. I put some coarse 80 grit sandpaper on my 5-inch random orbital sander and started sanding. My first intention was to remove as much of this chalk paint as I could, but as I was sanding with this really heavy-duty aggressive sandpaper, I could tell that this paint was adhered extremely well, which is a great thing for me. That means I don't have to remove all of the paint in order to put my new paint on top. I'm completely confident that this blue paint is on there and it's not going anywhere and it's not going to affect my finish. After I had come to that conclusion, I decided to give up on removing the paint and just to smooth everything out. This blue chalk paint had been hand brushed and there were quite heavy textured brush strokes in the finish, so I used my sander just to eliminate all of that brush stroke texture and smooth out any areas of damage. I like to use my 5-inch random orbital sander on flat surfaces like the body of this dresser and these drawer fronts because it gets the job done really quickly. But when it comes to curved details, trim, and edging, I like to switch it up to my Surf Prep 3x4 electric ray sander. This sander fits into tight furniture spots much more easily than the round sander, and it does a great job with these foam sanding pads of getting around curves and contours without flattening them out. Once I had the previous paint job smoothed out and I was satisfied with the way it was feeling to my hand, it was time to fill in those old hardware holes. For this one, I'm going to be using some of this PC Lumber wood epoxy. This is a 2-part epoxy product. It comes in a tube with a lighter putty color in the middle and a darker natural wood tone wrapped around it. Basically, all you do is mix those 2 putties together until you get a consistent color, and then you can use it to fill in old hardware holes or make repairs, and it will dry as hard as wood in about an hour. A few of the corners on the drawers were missing some of their veneer, so I used my putty to fill in that as well. After I'd smoothed out all of my wood putty, I noticed that there was one drawer that was having a lot of issues with veneer. It was cracked and lifting in a lot of spaces, so I went ahead and grabbed my wood glue, and I'm going to try and save this. I bought a 10-pack of these craft syringes off of Amazon, and they are perfect for getting your wood glue into tight spaces. I used the syringe to apply the glue up underneath the veneer, and there were a few spots where I actually had to grab a little razor blade to kind of pry it up far enough that I could get the syringe inside. Once I had the glue where I wanted it, I clamped everything down and let it dry. Now comes the deep clean. I mixed up a bowl of hot water and Dawn dish soap and gave the whole dresser inside and out a really thorough cleaning. Nobody wants to buy a dresser with someone else's dust inside. The last thing that I want to do before I move on to primer and paint for this piece is to protect the inside of the drawers. They are beautiful bare wood in really clean condition, so I don't want to risk getting any overspray or paint drips on the inside. I use some low-tack green painter's tape to cover things like the dovetails on the sides of the drawers, and then I use some Scotch brand blue painter's tape and plastic in one to encase the drawer so that I don't make a mess. I will leave a link to all of the products that I used in this video down in the description box. My next step is primer. As always, I'm using my favorite Zinsser Bin shellac-based primer. This product tends to separate really quickly. The shellac will separate out of the white pigment base. All you need to do is just make sure that you give it a really good stir up before each use. For the sake of speed, I decided to spray my primer with my gravity-fed HVLP pneumatic spray gun. I run this gun with a 30-gallon air compressor that is just barely big enough to keep up with me. I always apply at least 2 coats of this primer. It dries really quickly, so usually by the time that I have covered the entire piece, it's dry enough for me to go back and immediately apply a second coat. And then I usually let it dry for 3 or 4 hours before I move on to paint. Once my primer was nice and dried hard, I came back with my little Surf Prep sander again and some super fine 400 grit sandpaper just to give it a final smooth out. There happened to be a ton of dandelion fluffs floating around from the lawn that day, so I had a few of those that landed in my wet primer, and this sandpaper is going to take care of that. The color that I've chosen to paint this dresser is a little outside of my own personal comfort zone when it comes to flipping furniture, but I bought the can of paint about 6 months ago because I loved the color. It spoke to me, and I've been waiting for the right piece to come along. This is that piece. I'm going to be painting this massive dresser in a house and canvas paint color called Burnt Sienna. It is a gorgeous, warm, earthy terracotta orange, and these colors on their own might seem a little intimidating, but terracotta and these kind of muted oranges and corally pinks are so hot right now in interior design and home decor trends. I think this dresser is going to wear this color well. House and Canvas is a low VOC, really user-friendly, matte chalk style furniture paint. It dries very quickly, so I let my first coat sit for about an hour. Then I came back and gave it a light sand. Again, dandelion fluffs and wet paint don't mix, and went ahead and applied my second coat of paint. As soon as that second coat of paint was dry, I lined up all of the drawers and drilled some new holes for the hardware that I'm going to be putting on this piece. I really wish that I would start remembering to drill my new hardware holes before I paint a piece. That way, if I mismeasure or I make a mistake, I have got lots of opportunity to fix it before the final paint job is done. But c'est la vie. This is where I end up every time. As soon as my husband got home, I had him help me bring this beast inside the house, and now I'm going to seal it up with some of House and Canvas's Ultra Matte Wax Top Coat. I've chosen to use a wax top coat over my usual satin poly top coat because I want to keep this piece ultra matte. I just think it suits this color better than a slightly shiny finish. And once this wax dries down, it will be just that, dead flat. This is a soft wax that is very easy to apply. House and Canvas does also sell a great kind of medium size wax brush, which I find fits in my hand perfectly. Basically, all you do is smear the wax over the painted surface, and then I come back once I've got my section waxed with a clean lint-free rag, buff off any extra, and swipe it back and forth sort of in the direction that the wood grain would go so that you get a nice, soft, even finish across the entire surface. Once I had all of the drawers waxed and put back into the dresser, it was time to start putting on my new hardware. These delicious chunky brass pulls are also sourced from House and Canvas. They almost match the metallic on the original legs of this piece. Not quite, but close enough. And I just really loved the lines on these. I think that they pair well with the straight line details on the dresser as well as the curved drawers on the sides. You guys let me know what you think about this hardware choice down in the comments. A really quick numbers breakdown for those of you who are here for that. I have my general shop expenses like sandpaper, cleaner, wood filler, stuff like that. Then I have my primer, paint, and wax. And the real big ding out of the budget for this one was the hardware. Hardware can be expensive, especially if you are replacing it on a 9-drawer dresser. That was the biggest chunk of my expenses on this flip. But altogether, only about $116 in on this one. I spent a total of somewhere between 6 and 7 hours worth of labor working on this piece, and I'm gonna sell it for $525. That leaves me a profit of $409, which is great for me, but more importantly, I have saved this beautiful, sturdy, useful piece of furniture from the landfill, and you can't be mad about that. Thank you for hanging out with me again this week. I'm gonna leave a few videos here that I think you might be interested in watching next, and I will catch you guys next time.